Welcome, everybody, back to our Sustainability Lounge. Great to have you here today. Dr. Sam
Great to
here
be
with
here.
you, and I'm here with our special guest, Dr. Sarah Ghaleb, who's joining us all the way from the wonderful desert in Saudi Arabia. And as you can see behind us, Sarah, we have this incredible, beautiful
Oh,
green backdrop. And it's a pleasure to invite you to speak to all of our participants on our Impact 10X United Nations Sustainable Development Goals event, which we launch on August 30. And we'll be working through 6 weeks, working on our specific projects and really having sustainability as top of mind. And it's great that we have you here today, Dr. Sarah, because you are a globally recognized and renowned social entrepreneur
oh,
and founder of KEYSS, which we've been really excited to learn more about passion, purpose, and innovation. And it's really great to have you here today because the focus really today is on social enterprise and social entrepreneurship. And I really feel that across the world I see many examples of this work, and you are a shining star. So we're really fortunate to have you here today and wanted to start the conversation around really what you're up to with Keys as a founder, and also the impact that you're seeing around social enterprise related to metrics and measurements and SROI. So over to you, Sarah.
excellent. Well, thank you so very much for having me, Dr. Samantha. I'm looking out my window and, well, I don't have as much green as you do. um, but it's absolutely gorgeous and very much looking forward to your continued success as well as the success of your impact entrepreneurs. So I'm hoping today to give you a little bit of a glimpse of some of the exciting ways in which you can approach your social enterprise. So I'd like to begin by saying a little bit about me. So 10 years ago, I was selected under the U.S. Department of State grant under one of Hillary Clinton's initiative, then Secretary of State, to introduce the concept of social entrepreneurship to the kingdom. And since then, I have trained thousands of entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs, pre entrepreneurs, and pre social entrepreneurs to date. And then I took the results and some of the challenges that I was finding in my training, and then I developed the Keys project. So, um, what happened was, and I think that many of you social entrepreneurs are going to find, is that when you start to think with an entrepreneurial mindset and you start looking into your community, you start wearing that hat, you begin to see opportunity. You begin to see challenges maybe that are in your communities that you would like to find solutions to. And so today we're going to talk a little bit more, as Dr. Samantha said, about what it means to operationalize it, but most importantly, what the impact of your startup can provide. And that, of course, could be tracked through SROI. So your SROI, your social return of investment, I am the first Saudi to be certified in that. I'm very excited to be rolling out an SROI actually in the coming months. And so I'll talk to you a little bit more about the what it means to have the SROI in just a minute, but you can see how everything is connected. So the first step when you have this incredible opportunity to identify that challenge, and when you learn more about the SDGs, you're all of a sudden going to have a couple of them that really stand out. If you're lucky, it will be one that you just really connect with, and you build um, this solution driven, just it'll give you this energy where you just don't want to picture not tackling this issue. So that is your very first step when you're learning about the SDGs, is to really start to identify, look at your community, and what is that gap? Okay. Once you've identified that gap, what we call a root cause analysis is, you know, what is it that's driving that gap or that issue that you would like to solve? So, for example, let's say the issue that you're faced with is in schools, for example, and you're seeing that there's very limited books in the library, or there's not access to library resources or something like that, and you dig a little bit deeper and you find out that there's lack of budget. The administration is not on board with having the proper library materials, as everything is now moving into a digital space. And what you're finding is that there's not enough reference. It goes back to the education system itself. There's not reference to specific books or so on. So then once you have the root cause is when you can really start to tackle your challenge. So, again, you start off number one, identifying that gap. Number two is, doing your gap analysis. What is the root cause of that issue? And that's when you can start to map out your solution. So once you have those two things, I want you to take a step back and jot down what are three ways that you can tackle that issue and have it be sustainable financially. So think of three revenue streams, three ideas, three business ideas that could tackle that issue. And this is, of course, what sets us apart from a traditional enterprise, because as a social enterprise, you're, of course, going to be mission driven. So you start with the mission in mind. Once you have some of a couple different ideas of what you'd like to do, that's when you start to look at it from different angles of what's feasible. You start looking at your strengths, your values, what it is that you want to achieve as a person, what's your personal mission statement. And this is actually where the keys project came about, which I'll share with you in just a minute. So after you have that that one idea, that one that says, what, this is really going to take it home, this is going to be financially secure, I'm able to create jobs and have impact in my community, that's where I'd like you to create your social business model canvas. So your social business model canvas is going to be, and just Google it, you can download any forms of it, but what it's going to do is it's going to really get you into the details of developing, who are your partners that are going to help you, how are you going to, what are your income revenue streams look like, what are your channels to be able to get your product or service out there. So it's going to really get you to start thinking a little bit more about what that social enterprise could look like. So once you have your social business model canvas and it's already completed, at that point, you kind of have your roadmap in place. And the next step is to start thinking about, okay, well, how do I put my feet on the ground? How do I get my soldiers out there, developing and delivering your product or service? So that's where the tactical part comes in. So one of the ways that I like to think, you always start with the pie in the sky, right? You always start thinking about these incredible ways, because nothing is too crazy if it works, right? So you really start in, and that's where you have the mind map, your flow chart, just my immediate reaction at this point is just write everything down. Just, close your eyes and think about the end in mind. Your beneficiary is holding or experiencing your product and service. How did it get in their hands? And just work your way backwards. Develop your flow chart. You can do mind maps as to the marketing messaging that you'd like to create. Um, and when you're developing, also, here's another tip: your marketing messaging, because you know as social entrepreneurs, You want to make sure that you are building an emotional connection. You want to make sure that to deliver your product or service, that you're able to get people in the community, maybe they're investors, your customers, you want them to be emotionally connected to your product. So my tip to you is to really think about the narrative. We started with the mission for a purpose. I want you to close your eyes and pretend, what does it mean to actually have your purpose, your mission come true? So imagine that world and portray that in your marketing messages. And that's how you get your call to action. That's how you get people emotionally invested. And that's how also, believe it or not, you can get your team members to get on board. You build your A team by people that are connected with your mission. So now at this point, you've identified your gap, the root cause. You've mapped out your business model canvas. You've created the feet on the ground, your flow chart of what it looks like to get your product or service out there. You want to also, so that's the tactical. Then you have the strategic, of course. Is I wanted to also add that while you're developing that emotional connection with your messaging, you also want to include your value prop, right? Very similar to a traditional enterprise. You want to have an opportunity to convey that in your messaging, the value that your product or service will provide. And then at that point, you're just putting your action plan into place. So now that you have an idea of the steps that you would take, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the KEYSS project. So KEYSS stands for Knowledge Exchange for Youth Supporting Society. And I started the KEYSS project because I found out that as I was training those thousands of social entrepreneurs, there was a really big disconnect. And a lot of the entrepreneurs that came to me after the fact said, I spent hundreds of thousands on this idea. I was emotionally invested, and my family, a lot of them lost their savings, their family savings. I heard so many sob stories, and every single one of them did not take the first step, which is self awareness. It is really important before you embark on this incredible journey, one of the biggest achievements that you'll have in your lifetime, that you take a look at yourself. You identify your values, your strengths, your weaknesses, and start to learn more about what you bring to the table. So if you are not as strong in one particular area, you absolutely can build a team that will complement that. And so KEYS starts off. It's a series of training courses. The first course is identifying your purpose, your passion, your mission in life. We also developed the first of its kind. It's the first NGO workforce training program in the kingdom that directly connects after they've been trained and everything, then connects to course number 3, where they actually, the participants will work inside NGOs and only working on their area of expertise that they've uncovered in the first course, which is, understanding their purpose and their passion. So it's an entire journey of self discovery that you, very similar to what you are embarking on with Impact 10X, because what you're doing is you're learning about yourself in the process while you're being exposed to these beautiful, beautiful messages and that take place through the SDGs. And how that ties all in with your SROI,
Mm.
if you think about it, your SROI is your social return on investment. What impact are you actually having for your beneficiaries? So, one of the biggest mistakes that our social entrepreneurs make is that they assume that they know what's best for a beneficiary. They assume that they know the solution to a challenge in the community. So, for each of you that are developing your product and service, My humble opinion is that you start off by listening. I remember my Irish mother used to tell me God gave you two ears and one mouth for a reason. And it's absolutely true. You need to go in there because remember, you're providing a solution. So if you're not thinking about those who will use the solution first, you're not really developing the solution for them. And so my experience with developing the SROIs, it goes back to, I'm sure all of you have heard about it, your theory of change. It's measuring your impact. So I want you to think about these questions. How do I know that change is taking place? How do I know that it's my product or service that's making that change and not another influential factor in the community or the environment? How do I know that my product or service is the best quality it can be or the best version of the prototype it can be? And how you get those answers is working directly with your beneficiaries. So I learned while I was taking the certification in SROI that it really does mean that you approach in a backwards methodology. You want to look at what is the goal, the impact, and what you're trying to achieve with your beneficiaries. And you work backwards to be able to generate the questions that you would use to continuously assess those beneficiaries that are using your product or service. And as you can see, it's all connected, but it begins with you. It begins with your self awareness. It begins with your emotional connection to a particular SDG. Because any entrepreneur, whether it's a social or a traditional entrepreneur, can tell you if you're not crazy in love with your startup and the idea of the impact that you're making, it won't be a success. I promise you. So I hope that I've been able to give you some tips. I hope that you've been able to identify what it means to really operationalize and really have that idea all the way to building a product or a service that can have the impact that you're looking for and how you can bring it into your communities for success. Is that helpful?
Perfect. So helpful. And I
Oh,
really
good.
I love the way how you have really operationalized keys, in fact, with passion
Yes,
and purpose and innovation and
absolutely.
yeah,
And
I see it.
there are 162 data points that we collect in our first course alone because you have to always practice what you preach. Now,
Hmm.
each one of you need to think about what the data is that
Mm,
you're collecting, how will you measure it? Are you going to do quant? Are you going to do qual? Are you going to
hmm.
do a mixed method? It's finding out what's the best way that you can get consistent feedback from your efforts on your product or service to make sure that you are doing your due diligence as an entrepreneur, but
Hmm.
most importantly that you're really listening to your beneficiaries.
And that's a critical link here is actually listening for the data, not just collecting
Yes,
data, right? And
absolutely. And
the data tells beautiful stories, as you know.
oh yeah,
And
it gives a voice, yep, and helps you with your operations. Exactly.
so true. And Dr. Sarah, I just also wanted to think about, you touched on this a bit about making sure that you have a vehicle or a module for collecting the data, whether it be, the quant or the qualitative or the mixed
Sure.
methods. Are you
hmm
suggesting that perhaps the participants should start their like data room day one? What's your suggestion
Day
on that?
Is there not even day one? Is there a negative
There you go. Data is king.
number that we can give? Absolutely. So, and here's the thing. You want to start out while you're building your prototype, you should already have data collected from your beneficiaries. You should already put the feelers out, and it could be a brief survey just asking if
Mhm.
you had access to whatever your product or service, insert here. If you had access, would you, how much would you pay for it? How would it be beneficial to you? What would you like to see? You can start asking those
Mm.
questions before you even start building your prototype, so that way you're always staying informed and you're making the best version of your product or service that's shown to be needed directly from your beneficiaries.
Perfect.
Love it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Excellent. Love it, love it, love it. Excellent. And I know that we're both dataphoric, so this excites us more. And
Yes.
honestly, as I've been having these critical conversations in the sustainability lounge, it has become evident that we're always asking the question, how can we be impactful with sustainability? And the only way
Hmm.
that we're going to be impactful is if we can measure it, and if we
Yes.
can actually show that there has been impact. So it starts with data. And I think, again, you've really given us some incredible framework for us to think about as we move into Impact 10X and how we should be approaching, and also the SROI, which would be extremely advisable for all of the projects
Yes.
to start thinking around that. So I
Hmm.
know our time is coming up, and just any other advice or last takeaway messages that you would like to share
Yes.
with our
I
participants?
would, and actually, there are resources out there. I saw an SROI booklet that's
Mhm.
free that you can download. You also have access to a lot of the tools and best practices, from anywhere on the web. You don't need to spend a lot of money. You just need to spend the time. And I promise you, by doing things right, being data driven, and really think about your beneficiaries and listening, you are putting in the critical first step to a more successful outcome. Yep. So
Perfect.
best
Thank
of
you.
luck to each of you. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah. And we'll be actually creating a in our Slack channel those resources, and
Great.
yeah, as an SROI. So we will be definitely listing all those amazing insights and resources that you have already shared with us. Thank you so
Definitely.
much. Ya shukran jazilan.
Thank
And
you.
masalama.
Ala afwan.
Masalama.
Masalam. Bye bye.